Welcome to the Elselah Books podcast. Today, we're jumping into a Christian guidebook called No to Say No by D.J. Sin. We're going to break down the key arguments and frameworks this book presents for trying to lead a holy life in our modern world. The book does not mess around. Right out of the gate, it frames this whole topic not as some small personal challenge, but as an actual, ongoing spiritual war. This idea you see here, this battle for personal purity, is the foundation for everything else in the book. Okay, so let's get into the meat of it. The author's whole premise is that this battle for purity looks completely different today than it used to, and the main reason? Technology. Now, what's really fascinating is this contrast the book draws. Think about it. In the past, the author argues, temptation often meant you had to physically go somewhere, do something in public. There was a built-in shame factor. But today? Well, with the internet literally in our pockets, temptation is private, it's constant, and that public shame factor, it's pretty much gone. And according to the book, this massive shift has consequences. The author connects it directly to things like a diluted morality, where sin is just cheap and easy to get to. This in turn leads to guilt, complicates relationships, and, from the book's perspective, weakens the family unit itself. So in this really challenging new landscape, how are you supposed to navigate relationships? Well, the book starts by drawing a super important line between two powerful emotions that, let's be honest, often get mixed up. The author takes a direct shot at that whole love at first sight idea. They don't call it love, they call it infatuation. And they use this Oxford Dictionary definition to back it up, calling it simply a foolish passion. And this slide just perfectly illustrates the huge difference the book is trying to show. On one side, you've got the famous biblical definition of love from 1 Corinthians, patient, kind, it endures. But on the other side, you have the book's description of an infatuated lover who is basically the exact opposite. Impatient, jealous, and really fragile. It's like night and day. The book then breaks down how it thinks this foolish passion actually grows. It lays out this 7-step path, starting with something as small as an inner pull. That pull turns into an obsession. Then you're thinking about them all the time, even dreaming about them. And from there, it turns into action. You try to talk to them, connect on social media, and eventually you try to impress them and make a move. The author sees this as a predictable and therefore an avoidable pattern. So this all leads right into the book's most practical advice. It's all about one thing: drawing clear, intentional lines in your relationships. The author gives us this really simple 3-level framework. Level 1 is just casual, hi and bye. Level 2 is a real friendship, where you share hobbies and interests. And then you have level 3, which is deep emotional intimacy. That's where you're sharing secrets and your deepest feelings. Okay, and here is the absolute crucial point. The book puts up a huge warning sign right here. It says that moving from level 2 friendship to level 3 emotional intimacy with someone of the opposite sex, if you're not married to them, is crossing a really dangerous line. To actually maintain those boundaries, the book gets very specific. This isn't about vague ideas, we're talking about concrete actions. Things like cutting back on texts and calls, actively avoiding situations where you'd be alone, and not giving in to what it calls emotional blackmail. So, to make all this advice stick, the author then turns to the Bible, using it not for complex theology, but as a source book of practical case studies. The idea is to learn from the mistakes of people who have faced these same temptations before. First up is a section framed as a direct warning for men, looking at a few figures from the Old Testament as examples of how temptation can work. We start with the story of Samson and Delilah. The book really zeroes in on this one quote where Samson demands a wife just because, as he says, she is right in my eyes. He's presented as someone driven completely by what he sees, and he ignores all the good advice he's given. So, from the book's point of view, the lesson is pretty blunt. It's a huge warning against the danger of letting physical attraction, just what you see with your eyes, totally override wisdom and the counsel of people who care about you. Next up, David and Bathsheba. What's interesting is how the author frames this whole disaster. It all starts with one seemingly small decision that's highlighted right here in this verse. David decided to hang back and be idle when he was supposed to be at war, doing his duty as king. And that's the big takeaway here. The book argues that major moral failures often don't start with a bang. They can start with tiny compromises, a lack of purpose, and the simple danger of an idle mind. All right, now the book flips the script. It shifts perspective to offer a series of case studies framed as warnings specifically for women.
focusing on how they can be manipulated or deceived.
The tragic story of Tamar is looked at through the lens of outside influence. The book points to this verse right here, putting a lot of the blame on Amnon's crafty friend, Jonadab, who's the one that comes up with the evil plan. So the lesson the author takes from Tamar's story is that just being innocent isn't enough, that innocence has to be paired with shrewdness, with wisdom. It's a warning to be smart about manipulation, emotional blackmail, and the seriously toxic influence of bad company. Okay, so after all of these warnings, all these examples of failure and temptation, what's the book's final strategy? How do you actually win this spiritual war? You know, what's really interesting here is that the final message is not about being perfect. It doesn't say you can never ever fail. Instead, using this powerful verse from Micah, the book's final thought is all about resilience. It's about being sure that even when you do fall, you will get back up. And really, the book's entire framework, the warnings, the levels, the case studies, it all boils down to this one very personal question for you to think about. In our world, where we are always connected, the challenge of figuring out where and how to draw our own lines is something every single one of us has to face. Thank you for listening, and do subscribe to our channel for more.